My name is Kathryn Borg. I'm an international trade advisor in the East Midlands. That means I look after companies who want to export. One of my specialisations is the global sports events, which are very good opportunities for people who want to export. And today, that's what I'm going to talk to you about. I've got a hell of a lot of information for you, so we're going to get through everything, and then at the end you can ask me some questions. I'm going to be around for the rest of the day over there in that bus, so if there's any questions you need, you can ask me later. I'm going to start with a video of a client of mine who, it's going back to 2012. He got some business going just after the Olympics in 2012. After the video, we're going to do an overview of the global sports events that are available now for you. Okay? Technology, eh? Right, so here we are talking about the global sports market now. There's quite a lot of information, so I'm not going to go through everything. I want you to read what you can on there, and we can ask questions afterwards. But this slide really is talking about how it is relationship driven and how it can be political and how you've got a cyclical demand when you're looking at the sports market. That means things like the Olympics, you know they're going to come up. You know there's going to be business, depending which country it's going to be in. Things like the Commonwealth Games, all those will be cyclical, and we can look in advance to supporting them. Political, because obviously the country's politics will become involved in that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we look at places like Qatar later on. Since 2012, and the legacy thing became very much the thing to do, we're now looking at legacy planning and sustainability when we're looking at export for global sports projects. That means that if you are in any sustainability type of thing, anything to do with legacy planning, really you need to be getting involved, because that is really the big thing now with the sports event. What can we do with this area after the sports people have gone? Just like they did in Stratford here. And that's very much an important factor for people. They like to copy it. They like to come and see what we've done. It's a very good point. I don't expect to go through all this, but it's just to give you an idea of the project life cycle. For example, we start off with the concept and the bidding. Now, each of these, depending what your product is, you will slot into one of these on this life cycle. So in the planning and design, you might be someone who's in environmental planning. You might be someone who's in architecture. You want to be slotting in at that stage. On construction and fit out, you might be a turf layer. So, you know, you need to get in at that point. And then the event delivery, that's when people like security come in. That's when people with catering and crowd control come in. So whatever your business, whatever your service, you will slot in somewhere along that project life cycle. And then again, at the end there, as you can see, the legacy now is part of that life cycle because you need to be in it. Moving on now to some of the projects that we've got coming up. We'll forget Rio for now, but as you can see, there's the Asian Indoor Games. They come round regularly. We've got the Winter Olympics coming up. Now, it's important to look at the countries that are well serviced with services and construction companies. For example, Japan. They'll be looking at us for help and support and services rather than actual physical building, because they'll already have their stuff ready. And then KTI is very important, and we'll have a look at that in a minute. But down at the bottom there, we've got two very interesting non-cyclical jobs coming up. That's the Indian football market and the China football market. The Indian football market has already been on the go. And there's a lot of business there. We'll talk about that again. But the China football market has now jumped in on the bandwagon. There's a lot of money to be spent in China because they are determined to build up a Chinese football concept over there. So we'll come on to that in a minute. Very briefly, I don't want to spend too much time on Rio. This slide was done in March. And in March, those opportunities were still required, believe it or not. So they still needed venue catering, they still needed sports equipment. I can't speak for the moment. I hope to goodness they've sorted them all out now. But and as you can see at the bottom there, there's a portal. Now, this is something you need to be aware of. When you're looking at sports events, one of the first things you need to do is enter into that portal to register your company and the service or product that you sell. You won't go anywhere without entering into a portal, and every sports event will have a website where there'll be a portal for you to enter into. Russia, again, I'm not going to go into this because I'm tagging Russia onto the end of this presentation to go into it in a little more depth. But there we are with the 2018 World Cup. And we're looking at 11 areas which is kicking up all sorts of infrastructure issues like trains and hotels and airports. So we'll look at that in a bit more depth later on. Indonesia, again, very briefly. When someone is awarded the games, like Vietnam were, you have to think about the economic side of it. And as you can see from there, they actually dropped out because they realised they couldn't afford it. So in 2014, Indonesia had to take over. Now, usually we have a long lead-in time, and they've had quite a rush to get this together. But in saying that, Indonesia are that's not me buzzing, are a very good country for development. And so they're even looking at MotoGP, the Asian Youth Games. So they're getting themselves geared up anyway for sports. So really, they should be able to cope with the Asian Games. Here we are in Peru. They've got the Pan American Games. And again, 33 sports venues, project teams. Again, they like you to bid through a portal, pretty much like Brazil in the way that they want you to. But look at the money that they're spending on it. They really do want to make this a success. Japan, as I said earlier on, they're not going to need the support that some of these other countries are. They're looking for the missing pieces of the jigsaw. And they're very much looking at us as a benchmark for 2012 Olympics, for their Olympics in 2020. And also, remember, they've got the Rugby World Cup, and they're looking at us in 2015 when we did our World Cup. So they're looking for guidance from us. There are opportunities there in services. Right, my favourite here, Qatar. I've been working with the Qatari Supreme Committee for about 4 years. They came over, we took them to St George's Park to meet lots of people who could support them in things like turf, construction, stuff like that. We're still working at it, it's a hard slog. But as you can see, it's part of a national vision. This is where the politics comes in. So the Qataris are already looking at a 2030 national vision. This World Cup is part of that, it's the catalyst. It's what's going to make the infrastructure in terms of rail, new towns, tunnels, roads, it's all part of the same thing. There's a lot of business to be had over there. This isn't cyclical. Kai Tak used to be an airport, and Hong Kong have changed it into a sports complex. As you can see, they're spending a hell of a lot of money on it, 1.7 billion. It's not going to be ready until about 2020. But some opportunities are things like the fit-out supply chain around 5-star hotels, and the feasibility study on a monorail. So, you know, and even just to mention it, if you're a turf supplier, there's a lot of green needed over there, as you can see. Now, getting on to sport in China, as you can see, President Xi wants the sports industry to be worth 500 billion by 2025. They will be hosting the Winter Olympics and the Asian Games, and he's aiming for the World Cup. We'll see how that goes. But there are plans for a lot of new football schools to develop. So anything around all this planning, the English Premier League is their guideline. So anything around that they can be helped with, you need to be keeping your eye on. On a lesser level, they're looking at sailing and equestrian sports. So they really are looking at developing their sports level here. But the money, the big money, is going into football. And just a very quick one on this. We're doing something called the International Festival of Business in Liverpool next month. And we have got a Global Sports Day at the end of June, which I will be there at. And we're going to concentrate a lot of the talking about China, because we'll know some more about China then. So do, if you need any information on that, do come to me later. Now, the Indian football market. Well, it's interesting, the Indian football market, because it's been going for a while now. The problem here is that the government own quite a lot of the stadiums. So it's a bit difficult in terms of developing these stadiums, marketing the stadiums, spending money on them. In saying that, they're linked with Liverpool. That is their most preferred brand. They also like Manchester United, as most people do, and they brought a lot of their coaches and expertise over there to help them. Now, there's a lot of interesting facts about Indian football, and some of the opportunities are here. They're looking at organising football camps. They're looking at obviously support and development for technical staff. And eventually, when they get this sorted out as to regards to their stadium ownership, then there may be even more possibilities for investment. But it's certainly one to watch because there's a lot of publicity being put into this. Just a little quick one on Rio. If you're planning on going out there, there's a British House where we do all our networking. We do this at all the Olympic sports venues and all the sports venues, actually. So just to advertise the fact that we are going to be there with a lot of networking, introducing you to local companies in Brazil, and that's something that we're offering. We have a global sports team in Victoria Street, and that's the list of them there. Let's get rid of that. Sorry about this. Right. I just wanted to go into a little more depth about Russia and the World Cup in 2018. As you can see there, it's a 5.5 billion investment programme. And they're looking at developing airports, hotels. Admitted they've already had some events, but this is going to be so big for them, and in such a spread area. You've got 11 cities there where people are going to have to get to see the matches. So they've got to look at a lot in their investment. I don't expect you to read through all this, but this is just the sports venues and the capacity that they're looking at in each sport venue. And not all of them are ready. Some of them have got general contractors already, but some of them haven't. Airports are probably the biggest thing in the Russian World Cup. There's opportunities for security equipment, passenger flow systems, ground handling machinery, and professional services and consultancy around airports. Here are some of the airports that they're looking at, and you can see the value that they're spending on them and their timelines. I mean, obviously these places don't particularly mean anything to you unless you know Russian intimately, but there's quite a few of them here. And you can see that some of the development programs, you're looking at reconstruction in some cases, and in some you're just looking at temporary overlays, which can be taken down at a later stage. Again, the hotels, they started off with looking at 63 hotels, but now obviously the project, as with any sporting event, it grows and it grows. So they've taken it down to 38 luxury hotels, but you're still looking at 86 new hotels in total with 14,000 odd rooms. That's a lot of business for anyone who could be a part of any of that hotel chain. And as you can see, the investment in new hotel rooms is right up until 2018. So IT, very interesting, because that's something they need over there. Opportunities, things like satellite technologies for sporting events, Tetra radio networks, and some system of service monitoring. So these are things that the Russian market needs our help with. again, you're looking here at food and beverage, hospitality programs, accommodation services. Even though they've had their sporting event the other year, they're still looking for support because the World Cup is quite a huge, sort of support for them that we need to be giving them help with. These two ladies are our UKTI people in Moscow, and they're the ones who specialise in the World Cup and any sporting events in Russia. So they will be the ones that you would need to look at if you wanted to have a chat with them. I know that was a bit of a whiz through, but I had a lot to give you, and global sports is a huge subject. I don't know how much time I've got left because I started late, but okay, I've got 5 minutes. If anybody wants to ask any questions now, they're welcome to, but I am going to be around for the rest of the day, so I'm quite happy to answer any questions later on. Has anybody got burning questions about global sports? Yes.
Well, you're outside the company. How do you go about doing it?
If you have Well, you'll need a company to go in with. If you've got the experience, and as you say, this lady's got to say she's got the experience but no company, you're going to need a company, because when you're actually going into those portals, one of the things they ask you is what experience you've had. If by any chance you've had experience in any sporting event, it's a really good boost for you. If you haven't, and they are real cutthroat about what they look at, you won't. But the other thing, of course, is to tag along as a second tier or a third tier onto someone else that is going into that. So that's a good point there. Anything else? Any other questions? No? Okay. Right, well, thank you for attending. I'll be around if you need to ask me any questions, and thanks for coming.